Oops. Okay, so that's 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and call on a few of you to make sure you guys have completed your paragraph and make sure that you guys are good to go. Now, are there any volunteers that would like to volunteer their paragraph? Anyone want to volunteer their paragraph for feedback? None? Okay, then I'll call on a few of you at random. Here we go. Let's start off with Isaiah. Please read your paragraph for us. Shh, quiet down, folks.
The first half, I can take no, so yes.
Okay.
Second half,
Okay.
women progressives were somewhat successful in their reform movements on labor and working conditions. For example, Ida Wells uncovering the scandal in Standard Oil Company. Didn't explain anything about it, so I don't remember.
Sure.
And reducing the hours of standard workday from 10 to 9, and in some cases 8-hour workdays. These speeches were admirable, but women were more successful in their political reform movements. Women progressives did all they could to gain more political power. They would hold meetings where everyone would further educate themselves, protest for women's suffrage in front of the White House. But the most important aspect in fighting for political reforms was women working in factories during World War I that showed President Wilson that women deserved the right to vote.
Okay, good. So you showed some labor and working conditions. Again, like you said, you could have improved that to kind of add more. You could have talked about child labor, Florence Kelly, someone else. So if you struggled with, for example, Ida Tarbell, you could have chosen another fact that might have been a little bit more solid. Exactly, so that's fine. I think that your politics was fine, though. You mentioned that it was a women's rights movement, that they picketed, that they fought. You might want to have mentioned a key figure like Alice Paul, the National Women's Party, a figure that might have promoted the 19th Amendment besides just women in general. You might have wanted to have been specific about which women might have been critical to promoting that kind of reform. Cool. But yeah, overall, not bad. Again, provided you had time to study for this, you probably would have done fine. Okay, anyone want to volunteer their essay? Yeah, Brenda. Everyone quiet down, please. Shh.
However, reforming labor and working conditions were less successful than political reforms. Women like Florence Kelly did help out, especially with child labor and the intention of stopping the women's. I couldn't find a word for it, but to help the woman by limiting the 10-hour workday.
Okay, so good. I think that what you should have done there is you should have put the somewhat successful first and end with your strongest paragraph. You always want to start off with your argument, then show the counter argument or show here's where they were kind of successful, but here's where they were more successful, rather than here's where they were really successful and end your paragraph, but they were okay too. So you kind of want to put it on its head a little bit and put the most successful or what you would argue your strongest paragraphs at the end, because you want to leave the reader with a good feeling, like, oh, this guy kind of came, hit it, went straight home for the very end. So you want to leave a good feeling there. Quiet down, folks. In terms of your facts, I think you did a good job talking about child labor. What she did well was she explained why it was somewhat successful. It's not just saying they were somewhat successful because they passed child labor laws, because that tells me that it's successful. It was somewhat successful. Unfortunately, it might have been overturned by the Hammer v. Dagenhart, or it was somewhat successful, but because of Mueller v. Oregon, it was somewhat sexist. So again, when you provide your somewhat or not completely successful, you have to explain why. That's like saying, Mr. King was somewhat successful because he became a teacher. So what is implied by that? Oh, he wanted to, have a job that made him thousands, tens of millions of dollars, but he became a teacher. So he was somewhat successful. Versus he was somewhat successful, but he became a teacher. Like, what? Does he hate his job or what? So you have to provide some qualification to those kinds of arguments. Otherwise, good. Anyone else want to volunteer? Okay, Alfonso, go ahead.
Although progressive women were somewhat successful in reforming labor and working conditions, women were far more successful in seeking political reforms. For example, Frances Willard formed the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which helped in establishing 36 United States in 1919. Also, Carrie Chapman formed the NAWSA in favor for women's rights, and Alice Paul created the National Women's Party, which led to suffrage and demand for rights. However, women did succeed in receiving a 10-hour work limit, but it was due to the thought for women being weak, unlike the progressive women who succeeded more with the 18th Amendment for women's rights to vote.
Okay, I think that you kind of jump around a little bit. So I think what you should do is make sure that you use the headings as kind of a political reforms were strong because blah, 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 and politics, women's rights, whatever else. They were also strong because of the reforms promoted through social conditions, and it makes it clear that when you talk about temperance or working conditions, it's clear that that's about social conditions. The other thing is, was your women's right paragraph showing that they were more successful, or that was your more successful paragraph, or was your...
Well, it was more successful, but you still arguing for both, so I thought it was...
a little bit equal?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I think that you talk about Alice Paul did this. She promoted women's suffrage. Carrie Chapman, again, the name dropping is fantastic. She did NASA. I think what you should have done, though, is showed the end success of it all, 19th Amendment. Because you talk about they promoted and fought for women's suffrage. My question is, did they succeed? And
That's what I read, yeah.
okay, so I think that you have to put that somewhat right after, because then it kind of flows right in. Because then otherwise I'm reading and I'm wondering, well, where's the 19th Amendment? So which is why I need you to, again, chunk it so you're not jumping around so much. You do one solid on political and one solid on working conditions or social conditions, and you're fine. It's easier for me to follow. But if you'd say, oh, well, they were strong, but then they were weak, but they were really strong. And it's hard for me to somewhat follow. So as a reader, I'm going to want you to kind of put them together and say, this is a strong paragraph, this is their weak paragraph. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let me choose one more volunteer, or one more random person. Maria.
Throughout American history, women have always represented a major force of time reform and change in society overall. The period between the 1800s and 1920 was, however, their most active. Women decided to end an oppressive cycle and break free to do good whatever they were needed. Luckily, they focused their attention on social and political reforms. To some extent, they had success in both. Their efforts in social change were quite effective. Women advocated for the prosperity of all and improving the livelihood of the poor. One of the most successful in this was the creator of Whole House, Jane Addams, who further inspired women to take action and help their fellow human brothers and sisters obtain benefits. For example, women were behind the passing of age-restricting working laws, such as the Kitty Owens Act. In addition to this, women also seek to uncover social injustices and enter the world of media in the form of muckrakers. An example of this was Ida Tarbell, who uncovered corrupt practices in Standard Oil and lynching in the South. However, they were the most successful in promoting political reforms. When they attained the right to vote through the 19th Amendment.
And then you talk about Alice Paul and all that other stuff. Good. I think, again, you write very strongly. I think your facts are there. My question would be, because you stated this in the very beginning, you said, luckily, they focused on women's rights and political reform.
Political and social.
Right. So my question is, why luckily? So that word stood out to me as because what could they have done? I guess it was like, would they have ruled the world with an iron fist, or because I think when you imply luckily, there's a suggestion that they just could have gone a completely other way. Like they could have just burned the entire country down. Luckily, they didn't, and instead they promoted social reforms. So it's one of those words that can be used, but as a reader, I'm going to wonder if you argue it or if it's just kind of a word that was used. Yeah. So so it's one of those words that I usually try to stray away from unless you know you can finish it. Because on the day of the AP test, when you have 35 minutes, you'll throw in a word that's as innocent as luckily. And even though it's not going to detract from the full essay, I'm going to look for how you resolve that luckily. Because I'm going to wonder, again, if you say, luckily Mr. King became a teacher, because was I going to deal meth? Was that like the alternative for me? But that's the question that comes in when you deal with those kind of those straight adverbs. It can detract from the essay. So you always want to make it a little bit more solid when you're making your arguments, just so you don't detract from what your reader's trying to do. Cool. All right. So again, good job, folks. Well done. Always strong writing from this class. So again, is everyone doing okay with these paragraphs so far? The next thing we're gonna do in trying to improve your writing, guys, we did stems, we did thesis, we did stems for argument. The next thing we're going to work on in the next week, and when we work through Unit 8, is sentence starters or topic sentences. How we're going to pull how you start your 3 paragraphs from your thesis, because I expect that right now many of you will start off your thesis or all of your sentences with something similar to this, and we're going to try to make that a little bit more concrete, how each of your paragraphs should start out. So it's not just random. My next paragraph is about this. Like, it should somehow deal with your thesis to some degree, because then we'll know what your paragraph is about, and it'll also put your argument more solidly towards your thesis. So we'll work on that in the next unit. But good, always good stuff, and it looks like you guys will be better prepared for your essay this Thursday. Fun times. Please pass in chapter 29 and 30 so I can grade and collect that. So if you have 29 and 30, please turn that in. If you don't have it, then please turn it in at the end of the week. I would like to have Unit 7 closed out so we can start Unit 8 next week and begin World War I. So again, if you have Unit 7, please, chapter 29 and 30, write your name on it and pass it in. Yes, sir. Yeah, sure, do that. So again, please take out chapter 29 and 30. And pass it in with your name on it, please. And then we'll move on. We got through how far with Taft?
Taft fires.
Did we finish this? Okay, we'll talk about it. This will be quick. All right, guys, pass it in. Pass it in, pass it in. Pass, pass, pass. And folks, if you did not do it because you were busy celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday, just look like you're watching the main. I got them. See, Brenda got the movie tickets. Yeah. See, so they were clearly there because Brenda went to watch a movie this weekend. I never lie. All right. So, last thing we were talking about, folks, is the Pinchot Ballinger controversy. And we discussed how Secretary of the Interior, which was hired by Taft, fired U.S. Forest Service Chief Gifford Pinchot, who was hired by TR. And technically, Pinchot was in the right here, right? Because he told on Ballinger for selling public land. He said, you can't do that, that's for the forest. And Taft fired who? Pinchot. And so, who's unhappy about this? Teddy Roosevelt. And so, Teddy Roosevelt and Taft get mad at each other. And what ends up happening is that the Ballinger-Pinchot controversy divides Taft and TR's relationship. Or it breaks Taft and TR's relationship. So if you guys don't have that as a significance of this event, you should note that. The Ballinger-Pinchot controversy divided or broke the relationship of Taft and TR. It broke the relationship of Taft and TR. Now, was there another event that TR was pretty unhappy about? What else was he unhappy about? The busting of U.S. Steel, right? He didn't like that. So just make sure you guys are aware of both events. It resulted in the destruction or the breaking of their relationship between Taft and TR. Good? It divided Taft and TR's relationship.
So it is like an interjection with, like, how they were friends and then they ended up fighting?
Yes, it's like Calhoun, they're friends and then not. TR is very similar to Jackson. They're very, very similar. We're going to talk more about their similarities in a bit. But yeah, they're very similar presidencies. Cool so far? Awesome? Great. And so TR is pretty pissed off at Taft, arguing that Taft was asleep at the presidency and the cats got in and destroyed everything. So Taft, you lazy bum, what have you done to my home? TR is looking in, wondering what is going on. He wants to come back inside the White House. Makes sense so far? That's his perception of Taft. Taft is not doing a very good job maintaining the home. Which brings us to the election of 1912. Let's talk about the election of 1912. In the election of 1912, you have 4 candidates. Naturally, the Republicans are going to nominate who again? Taft. Taft is a Republican. He's the incumbent. They're going to nominate him again. Now, Teddy Roosevelt ran in the primary and wanted to be the president. But the Republican Party told him, no, we don't want you to be our presidential candidate. So what did Teddy Roosevelt do? He created his own party. And what was that party called? The Bull Moose or Progressive Party. So the Progressive Party nominates TR. What is that going to do to the Republican Party? It's going to split the Republican Party because there are Republicans in favor of TR and those in favor of Taft. But he splits the Republican Party and the Progressive Party becomes the other political party. The Democrats will nominate who? Wilson. Woodrow Wilson. And then there's a 4th party that runs at this time. What's that 4th party? You guys did your homework. What's the 4th party? Oh, come on, folks. The Socialist Party. And who did they run? He was the leader of the Pullman strike, the American Railway Union. He was a labor leader. His name looks like a Supreme Court case.
Something D.
No, D. His name starts with the letter D. So close, but not really. Eugene V. Debs. Remember Debs? Debs is a leader of the Socialist Party. He runs for office. Good so far? So you have 4 parties running for office in this election. These are 4 serious parties, guys. These aren't just like random parties like before. These are 4 serious parties. Yes, sir.
It's true that Teddy Roosevelt got shot, he had a paper right here and didn't go through it.
Yeah, pretty much.
He got shot and gave us his speech, right?
Yeah. He had like many drafts of his speech in his pocket and he got shot and he didn't die. Well, in 1908, folks, Teddy Roosevelt willingly gave Taft the nomination for the presidency, right? Like, Taft, you will be my successor. Because he loved him. Like, you are great. You will be the next president. But in 1912, he's like, hey, nominate me. Give it back. I want to be president again. So again, very violent, very aggressive. He wants to be the president again. And so you have the emergence of the Progressive Party or the Bull Moose Party. The Bull Moose Party.
Which one was the president that did it one term and then was the
Cleveland, Harrison Cleveland. He's the 22nd and 24th president of the United States. But he's only the 22nd person to be president, but he served 22nd and 24th.
He's the only person who's ever done that?
To serve 2 non-consecutive terms? Yep. TR tried to be the second. So, Teddy Roosevelt creates his own party, which splits the Republican Party, right? He takes Republicans with him, so you guys should note that. He does make this party out of Republicans and some Democrats, but mostly Republicans. And he becomes a bull moose. Now, many people always ask, and you guys asked previously before, so Mr. King, if he's bull moose, why are the Democrats donkeys? And again, the answer is what? Jackson was a jackass. He's a donkey. So Democrats naturally eventually became just donkeys because Jackson was a jackass. He said, well, that's great. I love that. So they adopted that as the unofficial symbol of the Democratic Party, and it kind of just stuck. So that's why Democrats are donkeys. Jackson was a jackass. He was stubborn.
Why is it advocates for Republicans?
For Republicans, So, in 1874, Thomas Nast came out with a cartoon suggesting that the Democrats were claiming that the Republicans were terrible. So here you have a donkey dressed as a lion that invades a zoo and tries to scare off all the animals. But the only animal that's not afraid is the massive elephant that he decided just to label the Republican vote. Republicans said, I like that, and they officially made it their symbol. So that's why Republicans are elephants and donkeys are Democrats. It's still like that today.
The ones that are veganous and all just call you the dragons. I like that.
Yep. Yeah, they liked it. Like, I like that. That's a good symbol.
If they were just like switch parties,
Uh-huh.
would they still keep the same symbol or would they change it?
No, the symbol from now on, if the Republicans are not elephants and Democrats are now donkeys, their policies will change, but not their logos. The logos will look exactly the same now. Donkeys are Democrats, Republicans are elephants, but what they stand for will change over time. I'll show you an image later. You guys might have seen it on the Facebook page. I show you like the Republicans playing cards. All those Republicans stand for different things, yet they're all Republicans. But they all fought for different things during their time. Abraham Lincoln fought to free the slaves. Other Republicans fought to reduce their rights and voting. So it's weird. It just, life is different. Anyway, he tries to run. But unfortunately, by running, he's what? He's breaking that two-term tradition. He's running a third term. And so the ghost of George Washington is appearing saying, you can't do that. But Teddy Roosevelt thought, I thought I dodged that. I thought I got past that. Because he said, I'm not doing what you did because my 3 terms are not what? Consecutive. See, I ran once because someone died. Then I ran for re-election. And then it was Taft. Oops. And then I ran again. So that third term is not a third term. It counts as 1 again, according to TR. Now, is he right about this? No. Is he wrong about this? No. He's not right or wrong because is there any policy that suggests this is right or wrong? No. Everyone just assumed, though, because again, it's not a law, that you can only run 2 terms. He's interpreting it as I did. It never said you couldn't run again another 2 terms. So according to TR, it's 2 terms off, 2 terms off, 2 terms off. And you can run indefinitely in 2-term cycles. So he said, I thought I dodged that, but people are saying, I don't know. I think technically this still counts as a 3rd term, and I don't think that's what George Washington meant. So it's up to you how you want to interpret, but many people argued that he was breaking the 2-term tradition. His supporters said he wasn't. It was completely new. Good so far? He argued it wasn't unconstitutional. It was completely legit. In any case, his Progressive Party campaign was something called New Nationalism. New Nationalism. And his goal was to satisfy everyone. So he wanted to make everyone happy. He wanted to make the entire nation happy in his campaign called New Nationalism. The first thing he was going to do, regulate good trusts. This is the most important thing that makes him stand out from all the rest. He wanted to regulate good trusts. Because what did Taft want to do? Bust all trusts, even the good ones, right? TR said, that's crazy. There are some trusts that are good for the economy. We should keep them. He wanted more government regulation. He wants more government involvement, which again is so different from the Republican Party today, who wants no government involvement. So they want more government regulation. Again, he's a Republican, pretty much. And yet the Republican Party today wants the complete opposite. It's crazy. Very different. He wants social welfare. What's social welfare, folks? When you help who? The people, the poor, the needy. Not necessarily the commoners, because the argument is that commoners are okay. Like today, the commoners in America are middle class, right? We're commoners now. But there are still those in need. They're still commoners, but they're commoners in need. So before, the commoners were the poor. This was the majority of America. But as society got better, the majority of us got better. So that's kind of how that worked. But anyway, social welfare is help for the poor. Yes, sir. The gospel of wealth still applies today. It even applies like today. Like my fiance, she got offered a position working with a philanthropist who has a $5 million largesse that he wants to donate to like different hospitals and schools and whatever else. So her job will be to manage those things. Child labor laws. Wants to end child labor. You know, help. Child labor laws. Better working conditions and wages. And so, folks, pretty much, I mean, is it any wonder that this is called the Progressive Party? He's fighting for what? Progressive reforms. I mean, these are all progressive reforms. He wants that middle-class woman vote, right? He wants, but they don't vote. So he wants to attract them, though, so that who will vote for him? But women can't vote, guys. Their husbands or their fathers or their boyfriends or their brothers. Guys, because it's ironic. They're courting the women's vote, but women can't vote. It's silly. I mean, why should they, right? That's the point. Yeah.
Or like the brothers and the fathers like
It depended on which family. I mean, there are families today, they're like, you can't vote. It depends on how conservative your family is. So there are families today that feel like women shouldn't vote. Which is true. I mean, that's a reality for some families. Most, I would hope, are not, but there are some like, no, women shouldn't vote, women aren't equal, women are unsafe, women are frail and weak. I mean, even if that's true, I'm just kidding. It's not true at all. I went to a very progressive school. My school was very liberal. I was raised to believe that all things are equal. Woodrow Wilson, however, believed in new freedom. Here's his campaign promise. I will give everyone new freedom. First, I'm going to bust all trusts because all trusts are what? They're all bad. I don't care if you might look good, but you're a wolf in sheep's clothing. You guys understand the analogy there? It looks safe, but they're really a wolf in sheep's clothing. We can't trust them. So he said if we bust all trusts, this is a new freedom to small businesses. Why? Yeah, so small businesses can compete. And if small businesses can compete, who can they hire? The commoners and more people. And are they going to pay them fair wages? Because they're your neighbors. You're not going to pay your neighbor like $2 a day because he's your neighbor and he'll know how much money you have because you live next door. So again, new freedom for small businesses. He said no government regulation. But he said because there's no need. Society will be perfect under me. So the government will not have to intervene because the economy will fix itself because all we'll have are small businesses. Yes, so he says it's yeah. So once you bust all trust, the government stops getting involved. Also, he wants laissez-faire. No government involvement as always. He does want a federal income tax because he wants to pay income tax for the federal government. He wants to pay for what? Any guesses? Social welfare. He wants to pay for social welfare, which means he's going to collect money and do what with it? Help the needy, right? Help the needy, whatever else. And he wants to create an independent treasury, which is pretty much a central bank, but he's a Democrat. And Jackson was a Democrat, and what was his opinion of central banks? Kill the banks. And yet he's a Democrat, and he's pretty far off from Jackson, isn't he? He wants to create a bank. Jackson spent 8 years trying to kill it. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am. No. Well, yeah, I guess so. Laissez-faire went along with his moral diplomacy, too. You know, we should not interfere with other countries because they have the right to determine their own governments until they don't, and then we'll get involved. So, there's that. Any questions here about Woodrow Wilson? You should know the difference between new freedom and new nationalism. Everyone understand the difference between the two? What? I think we've got another Washington, and Wilson is his name. The argument is that, one, he would start a new two-term tradition, unlike TR, who's clearly not a Washington, because he's breaking the two-term tradition. He's also moral diplomacy, not get involved kind of president. He's also a laissez-faire kind of president, because Washington was not very involved. Whereas the other two guys, get involved, get involved, get involved. Cool. Also, he had wooden teeth. Now, the interesting thing about all three major candidates, because the Socialist Party didn't really matter, was that they tried to court the female vote. Even though women couldn't vote, they still tried to attract women for their support, even though women couldn't vote. Because they don't vote for another 8 years, yes. Yeah, women were so successful in what they were doing that the argument was, well, if we can get women on our side, then imagine if they can help support our party. So they tried to court the women's vote because the women were actually pretty successful in what they were trying to do. Yes, like to campaign for their party. Women can't vote, but if you went out and tried to get men to go out and vote for the Democrats, Republicans, or progressives, you would win. Was the argument anyway. So they tried to get women to support their party, and they would promise them, and we'll promise to give you the vote eventually. So that was their promise. In any case, folks, what does this equation tell us? Yeah, Republicans divided by the Bull Moose Party of the Progressives equals a Democrat winning the election. So that's what happens. A tidal wave of the Democratic Party washes over the Republicans. Again, I love these cartoons. They're just so creative. I would never have imagined this myself. Again,
How are they trying to brush away the wave?
yes, they're trying to sweep it away, and yet the tidal wave is coming. It's a wave of, a tidal wave of Democratic voters is coming. And as a result, it was a tidal wave, folks, because Wilson dominated the election. 435 to 96 is the electoral win. Major win, folks, winning 82% of the electoral. He did not win a majority of votes, but he still won a plurality. I mean, 42% compared to 27 and 23. That's still not bad, but he is technically a minority president because he didn't win 50%, but that's still okay. Questions there? Good. Wilson wins, becoming the 28th POTUS, serving from 1912 to 1920. Cool? All right. TR? Yeah. Because, again, if you go back to this, they split the Republican Party. These two parties should have been one, but they split, and so naturally he won. Because Taft was attacking TR, TR was attacking Taft, because they were fighting for the same votes. If they had just one guy, they might have had a better chance. So, oh well. He becomes the third president, and Wilson takes office. You go from TR to Taft, Taft to Wilson. And interestingly enough, both pictures were photobombed. So there's that. In any case, folks, once Wilson becomes a president, he becomes a pragmatic president, very much like Jefferson. What does it mean to be pragmatic? He's open to change. It's not that he easily changes his mind, but he's open to changing his mind. He's open-minded is another way to put it. Because otherwise he'd just be stubborn and be like, I'm only going to do it my way. But he was open-minded, and he adopted what into new freedom? New nationalism. So he adopted new nationalism as part of his domestic policy. So he was now new nationalism and new freedom. He was both. Good? Cool. The man was pragmatic. A few cool things that he did. He lowered the tariff with the Underwood tariff from 40% to 27%. That's the lowest tariff, you guys have to know. Because you had the compromise tariff, but that went from 35 to 25 over 10 years, right? Or over 8 years. Whereas this one is straight to 27%. It's the lowest tariff that you guys will ever have to learn about. That's low, 27%. Very, very low.
Did it hurt the economy?
No, it didn't hurt the economy. The question was, did it hurt the economy? No. The other question was, do we have tariffs today? The answer is yes and no. We signed the GATT after World War II. Not like GATT, but like GATT, like General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which technically outlaws tariffs across the country. And we're also part of the World Trade Organization, which is supposed to open up free trade between countries. So technically, we don't have tariffs anymore. But periodically, the U.S. will request a waiver from the WTO that allows us to have tariffs on specific products. Like, for example, we have a 19% tariff on tires from China. We have a 7% tariff on cheese from France. And usually we have tariffs for specific industries in America that want protection. The car industry, during the financial panic, requested a tariff on Japanese cars so that American cars could compete. Does that make sense? So every so often now we'll have specific tariffs. Back then it was like 25% across the board. Nowadays it's a little bit more specific. It's like for specific items. Here. Huh? Yeah, you have to lobby Congress to get it, and you have to ask for permission from the international community. Sorry, Maria, what was your question?
Are those money flags?
Yes, those are money flags. Because they're trying to protect, Congress of money. 16th Amendment is passed as well, the federal income tax. The basic argument being that we will now collect money for the federal government to pay its bills. Or collect more money for the federal government to pay its bills. You're going to pay taxes on your income before you pay taxes on sales tax and tariffs. That was the only way the federal government made money, on sales taxes and tariffs. Now, they make money off of your income. Because, and here's why, folks, is the government growing? Yes, in order to meet the needs of this growing government, they need more money. So they start taxing your income as well. So that's that. By the way, folks, this is, quiet down. Guys, quiet. This is a graduated income tax. A graduated income tax means what? Yeah, the more you make, the higher your interest rate, or the higher percentage you pay. So the more you make, the more you pay. But it does suck, but it doesn't. It actually helps those that need the money. So let's say you make only $1,000 a year, they're going to charge you maybe 1%. But say you make $6 million a year, they're going to charge you like 33%. Because you have more ability to give back. And they say you should because the only way you made your money was because we bought your stuff. So even the poor will buy stuff from McDonald's, and the CEO of McDonald's who makes $6 million should give back to those in need so they can buy more McDonald's. But that's the basic idea. It's cyclical. So that's the argument being made. Huh? Pretty much. I mean, that's where money goes. It just kind of flows in a circle. Pretty much, if you take economics, which you will next year, either with me or the other teachers who teach it, you'll learn about two cycles of economics. There's a larger cycle, then there's the inner cycle, and then there's cycles that go this way. There's pretty much 4 different cycles of the economy and how money flows. It goes in and out of your home, in and out of businesses, and it kind of flows in just one system. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's a basic idea. Anyway, he also passed the Federal Reserve Act. All right, folks. Shh, guys, quiet down. You guys are getting a bit chatty. Direct election of senators. Guys, quiet down, folks. So the Federal Reserve Act was passed by Wilson, and this created an independent central bank, which Jackson would have just hated. But a Democrat created an independent central bank. It was created for 2 key reasons. Number 1, it was intended to regulate the money supply. Their job was to regulate the money supply. And 2, they were supposed to prevent depressions. So again, regulate the money supply and prevent depressions. Here's why. Prevent depressions. Just so you know, folks, this is the Federal Reserve System that exists today. Every piece of money that you have, folks, is a Federal Reserve note that comes from these banks. Okay, it's part of the Federal Reserve System today. And that Federal Reserve is divided into 12 districts across the country. And those 12 districts are responsible for the banks in those specific territories. California, for example, is in which district? San Francisco District, or District 12. The reason why we divided it into 12 districts, guys, quiet down, was that before, the Federal Reserve or the central bank used to be just in D.C. The problem is if an economic panic begins in San Francisco, it'll take forever for that money to flow all the way to San Francisco. So instead what they did was they took the money of the United States, they put it in this Federal Reserve System, and they divided it into 12 banks across the country. Each of these banks and each of these cities hold billions upon billions of dollars in gold to back the United States currency. You heard about Fort Knox? Fort Knox is the largest gold reserve in the United States? Yeah. There are others in the United States that hold gold for the United States in the Federal Reserve. It's their job to print money, regulate money throughout the entire United States. Alfonso, Jasmine? And so their job is to regulate money throughout the entire United States. If there's a depression in, let's say, Los Angeles, who's the first to act? San Francisco. They're going to make sure that doesn't spread across the rest of the country. That's what they do. But here's the other fun part. This bank is privately controlled, or rather privately owned. So this private bank holds all of the United States money, but it's not owned by the United States. It's controlled by the United States. It's governed by the United States. It's regulated by the United States. But this is not a bank that the government owns. Remember the independent treasury bill that, what's-his-face signed way back when? Martin Van Buren, the divorce bill? That's part of the same system. We divorced ourselves from that banking system, so we no longer have our own bank. We just operate or work with this one. But this is a completely private bank, but we appoint someone to be in charge of it, to regulate it, but we don't own it. It just has all of our money.
Are they owned by all the banks?
No, they're not owned by all the banks, but every major bank in the U.S. is on the board of directors. And the United States is pretty much the CEO of all of this. So you have a Federal Reserve Board chairman, or chairman of the Federal Reserve. He is appointed by the president to oversee all 12 banks. But again, it's not a U.S. bank. It's a bank that's controlled by the U.S. So hypothetically, which will never happen, but hypothetically, they could just start spending our money because they are a private bank. It's never going to happen, but it could happen.
Why would it never happen?
Because they're regulated. Yeah. They could, but again, that's why we have military and whatever else. It'll never happen, but hypothetically they could.
Technically, we have like a lot of money in them right now.
Sure, and the argument is this. Here's why. If the federal government wants to borrow money, we don't borrow it from ourselves. We borrow it from the Federal Reserve. So we don't borrow money out of our own pocket. That's the other problem. We just don't want to give debt to ourselves. We give debt to the Federal Reserve, who loans us money. Exactly, and we'll pay them back, not pay the American people. Yeah.
This will help the Great Depression.
It failed during the Great Depression, but not because it was a bad system, but because the government refused to regulate. If the government did its job, it would have been fine. But the Federal Reserve failed because the chairman failed to do his job. Cool, Federal Reserve. We use it today. Then you have the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. Again, the Federal Trade Commission is designed, again, to investigate trusts. And if they find out that there is a trust or a monopoly, then they use what? The Sherman Antitrust Act. To bust it, right? They bust it. So the basic idea is that they're blocking competition. Then the FTC's job is to investigate. If they really are a trust, then their job is to investigate. Why can't the Interstate Commerce Commission be used for all trusts? Why can't the ICC be used for all trusts? Because some trusts are where? No. Because some trusts are just in one state. Does that make sense? So because some trusts are just in one state and they're not trading across states, the ICC can't regulate it. That's what the ICC regulates: trains, railroads, telephones, and telegraphs, because they cross state lines. But let's say I owned all the hamburger joints in California. That's a trust monopoly issue, and so the FTC can get involved because the ICC can't. Does everyone understand that? That's why we need a second one. That's what the FTC is for, is to regulate all trusts that the ICC can't for constitutional reasons. Because the ICC is only powered to do interstate. Intrastate is now under the power of the FTC. Yeah. So the FTC's job is to regulate all trusts, but specifically those trusts intrastate. But specifically trusts that are intrastate. Can they do interstate? Sure they can. But that's what the ICC is for. But the ICC is primarily for that. Their specific job is for intrastate commerce. Monopolies that are just within a specific state. So let's say there was only one casino in Las Vegas. Might the FTC get involved? Because they're all owned by, let's say, MGM. Oh, that's a trust. We got to break that and have different owners of Las Vegas. Which there are. There are like 9 different casino companies in Las Vegas. Then there's the Clayton Antitrust Act. It's a new one. Yay! The Clayton Antitrust Act, folks, what this did was exactly what the Sherman Antitrust Act did. It strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act, but also made sure that this act did not what? Exactly. This strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act, but also made sure that it did not hurt labor unions. They want to make that very clear, because is that what the Sherman Antitrust Act did? Yeah, pretty much. That's all it did until Teddy Roosevelt became president. They're protecting labor unions, yeah. So is this a different government that protects labor? Yeah, so it strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act, and it protected labor unions. Good so far? Cool. Then you have the Adamson Act. The Adamson Act. Adamson Act is pretty awesome. And what do you think the Adamson Act did? It created a mandatory 8-hour workday. Finally, we have a mandatory 8-hour workday, which means, can employers force you to work more than 8 hours now? No, they can't. However, if you want to work overtime, you can too. So this also includes overtime pay, which is awesome, because overtime pay is time and a half, guys. When I used to work on an hourly, I'm a salary now, so it doesn't matter how many hours I work, I get paid the same. But when I used to work hourly at different companies, I would try to work as much overtime as possible, because you get time and a half. So I used to work for a company that would travel a lot, and I'd have to work on weekends. So you're only supposed to work 40 hours a week. But if I worked 80 hours that week, 40 hours of that was regular pay, but the other 40 was time and a half. So let's say you got paid 12 for half that time. The other half was 18, which was awesome. And that's when, you went on vacation and you bought yourself a TV, because it was nice to have the extra 18. So yeah, guys, time and a half is amazing. It's great. It's one of the best things in the world. I don't get it anymore. But, whatever. Yeah, 8 hours workday, pretty successful. So that's an achievement, right? That's something you can talk about in your essays. 8-hour workday. Yeah, we did that. So even if it wasn't in the progressive era, is this still considered part of the progressive era? It's still a success. Good. Atkins v. Children's Hospital. So here's what happens. Supreme Court ruled, they ruled that minimum wages for women were unconstitutional. They ruled that minimum wages for women were unconstitutional. So you are not allowed to have a minimum wage for women. So is that a win or a loss? That would be a loss. Now, here's the argument for it. Number one, they said, look, women have the right to vote now. So they're equal, and men don't have minimum wages, so women don't get to have them either, because I thought you guys were equal. Because you can vote. So women don't get special treatment anymore because they're equal to men according to the law. Does that make sense so far? They said, yeah. So they said, women have the right to vote? Okay, well then women don't get special treatment, which made businesses pretty happy. The second thing, quiet down, was something called freedom of contract. The argument was that women don't have a choice if they want to be paid less. What if women are willing to get paid less? Now they can't get work because they're not willing to be paid less. Here's what happened. At a children's hospital was being told they can only pay a minimum wage, let's say, of $8 an hour. And they only had a budget of $24 an hour. So at the current moment, they hired 4 employees at $6 an hour. But once the minimum wage came in, how many people can they hire? Only 3, because they can only charge $24 an hour. So Atkins said, I'm willing to work for $6 an hour. That's still better than nothing. But she said, I'm sorry, I can't pay you 6 because the law says I have to pay you 8. And if I pay you 6, am I going to get in trouble? Yes, I will. Even if you agree to it, I'm not allowed to do it. And so they said that disrupts women's freedom of contract. Some women might choose to work for less because they might want to be more competitive. Let's say you guys were all saying, let's say you were trying to hire someone, to, I don't know, fix your car. You're going to get quotes, right? Saying, oh, well, I'll do it for $10 an hour. I'll do it for $9 an hour. Oh, well, I'm hiring it for $9 an hour. But that's pretty much the argument. Women have no freedom to negotiate. It's $8 or nothing. So they said that's bad for the economy. The problem is, what can employers now do? Yeah, ask them, well, you know what? I can only pay you $3. So it's either take it or leave it. Sorry. So even though it was supposed to make women more equal, did it actually hurt workers? Yes, it did. It hurt workers severely because it allowed employers to charge very low rates. Cool beans?
But if there's wage, like there's the $8 thing, so more money with 8 hours.
Yeah, 8-hour workday, not wage. So we achieved an 8-hour workday. We did not achieve a minimum wage yet. We will get one, not yet. There's a Federal Farm Loan Act. This is pretty obvious. We gave loans to who? Actually, horses. No, farmers. We gave loans to farmers. So that's pretty simple. Federal Farm Loan Act was a loan to farmers. It's in the name, so I imagine you don't have to write anything for this. If you can't figure out what it did, you're in the wrong class. So Federal Farm Loan Act. Horse loans. So, folks, that's pretty much it for Woodrow Wilson. I do want to note that under Woodrow Wilson, the 4 progressive amendments were passed. So I want you guys to write down progressive amendments. These were all passed under Woodrow Wilson, and they were the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. These were all passed under Woodrow Wilson. Now, did these all start before Wilson? Sure, but they were all passed eventually under Wilson. That doesn't necessarily say that he was responsible for them, because what role does a president play when passing an amendment? What role does a president play in passing an amendment?
Enforcing it.
The only role that he plays is enforcing it once it's passed. But does a president play a role in passing an amendment? They play 0 role in passing an amendment. So you can say, oh, well, Wilson passed these amendments. No, he didn't. He has no power to do so. But did he probably support them as a president? He said, yes, I would like this amendment. Congress could say, I don't care. We're going to do it anyway. Yeah, I don't care. You can like whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Does it help when the president supports it? Sure. but it doesn't mean that we need his support. In any case, you guys need to know these 4 progressive amendments. Let's see if you guys know what they are. Let's go with Lily. What is the 16th Amendment? What's the 16th Amendment? We just talked about it. 16th Amendment. 3210. Federal income tax. So write that down, folks. Federal income tax, right? An income tax. Federal income tax. That's the first progressive amendment. Let's see. Elizabeth is not here. Jasmine. What is the 18th Amendment? I threw you a curveball there, huh? You guys thought 17th. What is the 18th Amendment? Jasmine, 18th Amendment. Nope. 18th Amendment. Let's go, Jasmine. Huh? It prohibited alcohol. Jasmine, what is the 18th Amendment? It prohibited alcohol. It's prohibition. Very good. Prohibition. All right, next one. Let's go with Jacqueline.
It was the direct election of senators.
Which one?
Oh, just kidding.
What is the Second Amendment? I'll give you a different one. What is the 13th Amendment? It was along with the 13th, 14th, and 15th. What was the 13th Amendment? It was the first one in a set of 3. What does the 13th Amendment do? It freed the slaves. Very good. Well done. Freed the slaves. Let's go with Alfonso. What is the 19th Amendment? Women's rights. Very good. Let's go with Lewis. What is the 14th Amendment? If we freed the slaves in the 13th, what do we give them in the 14th? Remember, what's the chronological order there? Citizenship. Very good. Laura's not here. Mildred. What is the 15th Amendment? So we freed the blacks. We gave them citizenship. What's left? What do we have to give blacks to make them effective citizens of America? What do we give blacks in the 15th Amendment? Right to vote. So 15th is right to vote. Well done. Fernando, 17th Amendment. Nope, it's not. Kevin.
Direct election of senators.
Kevin, what is it? Direct election of senators. Fernando? Fernando? Direct election of senators. Very good. Direct election. Who used to elect senators before the people? The assemblies or state legislatures, right? So make sure you guys know that. That is a question that will likely come up. Who elected them before the people? It was state legislatures or assemblies, whatever. Cool. Okay, folks. That's pretty much the end of Unit 7, but that doesn't mean we're not done with our work today. We got to prepare for your test. Oh, yeah, your test is on Thursday. Yeah, pretty much.
What's the 46?
There is no 46 amendments. Take one, pass it down. There are 27 amendments.
What was the 20th? 27.
The 20th Amendment, 19.
Which one was the age to vote?
Change 8 to vote, 26th Amendment. That's because 2 plus 6 is 8, 18th Amendment. That's how I remember it. Well, that's how you guys remember. I just know what it is now, but. What? 27th is Congress can't give itself a wage increase. They can't increase their own salaries because otherwise they would obviously increase their salaries. 25th is the Presidential Succession Act. Who follows the presidency after the president, vice president, and president pro tempore, and speaker of the House? It creates the succession of presidents. I'm passing out your terms, and I'm also passing out your unit packets. Sorry, what was the question? The 20th Amendment, I believe that's ending lame duck. That ends the lame duck period. A lot. Always. Gay marriage will likely be an amendment that we consider. There's always amendments that are considered. It's just that most are killed. I would say in our lifetime, there'll be like 400 amendments proposed, and none of them will be an amendment. Maybe one or two. Maybe one. Not even. Probably less than that. Remember, we've been around for almost 250 years, or more than 250 years. We've passed only 27. So, very rare. Let me explain the things you guys are doing first, and then you can go. Okay, go. 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 Okay, folks. So, listen up. Listen up, folks. On Thursday, you guys will have both. Quiet down. Trying to prepare you guys for your test on Thursday. On Thursdays, you guys will have both a multiple choice test and an essay to write in class. It will not be a DBQ. It'll be a standard essay for this time around. Next time will be a DBQ. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So you guys will have a standard essay. Now, multiple choice you guys know how to tackle. That's going to be for the key terms. And you guys have your study guide. That's going to be due on Thursday. So just do it because it's going to help you study for your test. Pretty simple. Now, I want you guys to turn to the back page of your key terms here, because I have your 4 essay topics. What's going to happen today is we're going to go ahead and talk about these 4 essay topics. You have 2 imperialism essay topics, and you have 2 progressivism essay topics. We'll prepare all 4. You as a class will vote for 1 in each. On the day of the test, you will have 1 of those. So what I mean, well, we'll get to it eventually. I'll just explain once we get there. So let's go ahead and prepare this essay first. Compare and contrast the foreign policies of Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. Again, if you're going to go ahead and write a 3-body paragraph for this essay, pretty much what are you supposed to do in this essay? Show what. So maybe who was more successful and what else? What else do you have to talk about here? So contrast is who was more successful, but also what do they have in common, right? So this is a compare and contrast. It's a pretty simple one. And so Teddy Roosevelt's foreign policy is called what? Big stick. Or bad neighbor. You can include that as well. Woodrow Wilson's is called? Moral. Okay, are we talking about Taft here? No. And again, folks, I would recommend doing what I'm doing on the board here. You can do it in your notes. You can do it in your notebook. That's probably more because you need more space for this. But I'm helping you prepare for your essays on Thursday. So do what I do. It'll help you out. Now, you need 3-body paragraphs. So what's the easiest way to prepare this, folks? What chart can you create to do compare and contrast? Venn diagrams, right? So you can do a Venn diagram like a lot of people do. I don't prefer those just because I feel like you're limited in space in that central. So I just do 3-column. Pretty simple. Okay, TR's on one side, Wilson's on the other, same as in the middle, equals, right? Pretty simple. So you have a 3-body paragraph here. Now, under big stick, you have to talk about the things that TR did that showed that he was what? Successful or effective. Guys, even if it doesn't say effective or successful, I would say 99% of the questions on an AP essay are asking you what? If these people or laws or time periods were what? Successful or effective to some degree. That is almost always the question. Before the AP test, folks, I will give you every single AP question ever asked since 1988, and you will see that pretty much every question asks to some degree successful or not. So that's pretty much what you have to get into your head. That's always the question. You also have to ask yourself, how were they successful? Wilson. And in the middle, how are they what? The same or alike. Cool. Okay, to quickly fill this out, who can give me a fact for TR? Raise your hand. Let's fill this chart out, folks. Raise your hand and give me a fact. Anthony. Panama Canal. Come on, folks, what else? Use your notes. You have notebooks, right? I am trying. Huh? No, this is for foreign policy. I'm a foreign policy, guys. We're not talking about domestic. Don't get that confused, guys. We're talking about big stick diplomacy. Kevin. Huh? The Russo-Japanese War? So the Russo-Japanese War. Alfonso? What else? Gentleman's Agreement? Roosevelt Corollary? Treaty of Portsmouth. Lodge Corollary. And there's a lot more. Right? I'm going to leave it at that for now, because you guys can fill this out later. What about Woodrow Wilson? What did Woodrow Wilson do specifically? And of course, does big stick and moral diplomacy count in these list of facts also? Yeah, obviously, big stick goes there and moral diplomacy goes there. What facts can we talk about with Woodrow Wilson? Jones Act. Jones Act. Jones Law. What else? What? Yeah. What else did he do? Come on, guys. Jones Act, Jones Law. Huh? Which one? No, that's Taft. Only talking about Wilson. Yeah. Yes, but he intervened, and we want to show that that's how they're similar. Because we want to show that interventions are what make them similar. Huh? Yeah, Canal Tolls Act. Really, guys, it should be called the Panama Canal Tolls Act. Because then we'll wonder which canal. So in terms of intervention, essentially it's the same then, folks. What did they do that was the same? They intervened or used force, right? So you can talk about Mexican Revolution. You can talk about things like Roosevelt Corollary if you want. You can talk about Russo-Japanese War here. And if you put it in the middle, are you going to put it in your TR paragraph? No, so I would take it off and move it here. You can talk about Colombia. Because Teddy Roosevelt was mostly talk, right? So he talked a big game, but he never actually took action because he didn't have to. But he did intervene at least twice. Russo-Japanese War and the Panama Canal. Make sense for everyone? Okay. So could you guys write this paragraph? 3 essays, or 3 paragraphs? TR successful, Taft Wilson successful, and then what made them similar? Cool. Also, the goal was to make the world a better place, right? The goal was to promote U.S. interests. All that stuff. Cool beans? Cool beans. All right. Next one. Analyze the extent to which the Spanish-American War was a turning point in American foreign policy. That's the next one there. Okay? Now, when writing this one, or when looking at a question that talks about having a turning point, because you'll have a few that are turning points, my suggestion is that this is asking you a question based on time, right? It's a turning point. So my recommendation is always to create a timeline. Right in the middle of that timeline should be what? The turning point. And in this case, the turning point is what? What is the turning point in this essay? Spanish-American War. Which means what they're asking is, what happened before, what happened after? So here's before, and here's after. So, before the Spanish-American War, folks, what was America's foreign policy? Isolationism. Remember that? We did not get involved. Who can explain or argue that we were an isolationist country? What are some facts that we can use? Or were some speeches made or policies argued? Washington's what? Very good. The farewell address. He argued that pretty clearly. No interfering in no entangling alliances, right? That had to do with what event? What did we not want to get involved with? Or the French Revolution, right? We want to stay away from the French Revolution. Good. What other instance did we want to remain isolated? The Monroe Doctrine. So we remain isolationist. That doesn't mean that America wasn't expanding, right? But we were expanding within the U.S. So what else were we doing? Which 2 presidents expanded America? Polk, and who before that? Jefferson. What did Jefferson buy? Louisiana Purchase. He purchased a third of the U.S. Polk purchased the other third. So these are both the expansionist presidents. Now you could argue that Polk went to war for it and Jefferson didn't, but either way, is that what happened before? We're still kind of isolationist though, right? We're not getting involved in other wars. We're just kind of greedy. So you can say we were pretty much isolationist with some degree of expansionism, right? Like we wanted some expansion. That's your first paragraph. Everyone cool with that so far? Your second paragraph would then be the change. So we have to talk about what? We have to talk about the Spanish-American War. So you might want to talk about the causes. What are some of the causes of the Spanish-American War, guys? Yellow press, sure. Yellow press, jingoism. What are some of the more general arguments for just imperialism in general? Competition, international competition, Darwinism. You guys can fill this out, right? Just fill in the list of causes. What territories did we acquire during the Spanish-American War? Here, Philippines, Puerto Rico, oops, RR, and Cuba, but technically, right? You put Cuba in parentheses. Cool? After the Spanish-American War, then, what was America's foreign policy? What kind of power were we? When we looked at that spectrum that I gave you guys, remember I gave you 4 different types of foreign policies? What is our foreign policy now? We're not a world police because we're not going around trying to end hatred and evil. We're a world bully, which means what kind of foreign policy do we have? We're imperialists. So we become an imperial. Guys, here's a hint. The unit is called imperialism and progressivism. So just throwing that out there. Imperialism is our foreign policy at this time. So we're imperialists. What kind of hints do we have that we're imperialists? Talk about the different presidents that were imperial presidents. Like who? Who was the first imperial president? Nope, not TR. Before him. McKinley. Jackson. Jackson is 1820. So what are some of the things that McKinley did? Well, come on, guys. Hawaii. He annexed Hawaii. Right? What else? Alaska wasn't him, but that's fine. That was a Johnson way back when. But what else? Where else did we get involved? In Asia. Open door policy. And you talk about the Boxer Rebellion, right? That's all good stuff you can talk about. There you go. Hey, McKinley. Then what other presidents can you talk about? TR, Taft, Wilson. And you talk about all the things that they did. And that's your essay. Can you guys handle this one? I would say so. Any questions about either of these paragraphs or either of these essays? Does everyone roughly understand how these essays are supposed to be written? Does everyone understand the basic argument for these essays? Okay, so grab your remote, folks. You have a choice. Do you want your essay option for imperialism to be, what is it? Compare and contrast TR and Wilson? Or do you want it to be Spanish-American War as a turning point? So vote A if you want it to be compare and contrast. Yes? Oh, that's okay. You have no voice. I'll turn it and figure it out later. I'll figure it out. Come on, folks, everyone vote. 23, 24, 25, 26. Vote, please. Do you want your essay to be the first one or the second one? Number 24, waiting for you. Letter and send. 24? Oh, not here? Okay, cool. Okay. You guys will be writing the first one. So, your options when you guys are writing will be, you have to prepare the first one. Okay, so everyone good on that so far? So put a check mark next to the first essay there. That's to be one of the essays you have to prepare for Thursday.
Okay, yeah, we got the essay done already there.
Next one. Let's talk about progressive essays. So, well, there are 4 on this sheet. I'm letting you vote for 2. And out of those 2 that you will prepare tonight and tomorrow, one of those 2 will be your essay. So I'm trying to narrow down your options, but I'm still trying to expose you to as much essays as possible. I want you guys to be able to write either of these on the day of the AP test, but on the day of your test, you're just going to have to write one of these 2. Now you have to choose your second option. Cool? Yeah. Every single essay we write are possible AP test questions, which is why I don't just say write this one. I have to expose you to as many as possible. And believe me, you will have to be exposed to like 30 or 40 essays by the end of the school year.
Which one did you say you think they're going to do it in this one?
I still have to go over. I have to do my own data analysis just to figure it out. But I go through a lot of figuring out. And I talk to other teachers to try to guess what it is. Last year I've been right the last 2 years. So I'm not right every year, but
This year, do you have any?
not yet. I haven't really thought about it yet. I'll let you guys know by the time we get to it. No, you won't be able to choose. I will choose for you what essay you will be doing that day. Cool? Okay. The next essay. Analyze the effectiveness of progressive reformers in addressing problems of the late 19th and 20th centuries. In your answer, focus on reform efforts in 2 of the following areas: state and federal government, the workplace, living conditions in cities. So again, we're not allowed to write about what? All 3. You must choose 2. So the easiest way to make sure we know how to do this is to just create 3 columns to make sure everyone's prepared for all the ones that they like, and just choose up the 2 best ones, right? So here is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is how I'm going to do it. I don't have to rewrite everything again. So when we talk about state and federal government reforms, folks, we're talking about what on Persia? Political, right? These are obviously political reforms. The workplace, these are what? On Persia, these are what? These can be economic or social, right? Because it might affect working conditions as well, and that's social. But they might be economic conditions like trust, monopolies, whatever. And living conditions are typically what? Social. You know, are you the poor, the immigrants, whatever else?
The workplace for labor?
Yep, workplace is typically labor. But in this case, labor is considered social issues. So you have 2 different social issues here, so it's kind of helpful to also talk about some economics. So let's fill in some facts that we can use to talk about their effectiveness as reforms. So what reforms, and I want you guys to be specific in the reforms, what reforms can we talk about throughout this essay? So just raise your hand and just tell me which column you want me to put it in. So go open your notes and tell me where you want me to put your facts. So raise your hand if you have one. Let's plug them in. Yep. Initiative. So you want to put them all? Initiative, referendum, recall. That's going to be state and federal, right? So initiative, referendum, and recall, definitely empowering the people. That's political reforms. Any other political reforms you guys can think of? Come on, folks. Empowering people, giving people more political power. So women's suffrage, who can be more specific about that? 19th Amendment, who can be more specific about who promoted that? So what groups or people might have promoted the 19th Amendment? So raise your hand if you have a name or a group that promoted the 19th Amendment. Let's go with Fernando. NASA, yeah, so NASA, definitely. Yeah, NAWSA. NASA something else. Any others that you guys want to add throughout this? It doesn't have to be just political. It can be any of these. Yes. Carrie Chapman Catt, sure. CCC. Carrie Chapman Catt. Dumbbell tenements, sure. Where do you want to put that? 3, yeah. Dumbbell tenements. So you can talk about slums and ghettos. Because you can talk about the problems they're fixing too. That's fine. What else do you guys want to add in this paragraph? Or this essay, guys? Huh? Muckrakers. They can fit anywhere, right? So let's talk about specific muckrakers. Where do we want to put them? Ida Tarbell, or Ida B. Wells, or Ida Tarbell. There's 2 of them. Ida Tarbell, where do you want to put her? Sure, she can be about workplace conditions because she's busting trusts, or she could be political because she's busting trusts. Where do you guys want to put her? Okay, so Ida Tarbell, right? She's a muckraker. She did Standard Oil. What else can you do? What other muckrakers can you talk about? Ida B. Wells. Where do you want to put Ida B. Wells? 3, living conditions. Ida B. Wells, she did what? She did lynching, right? Okay, what else? What other types of reforms can we put out here? Who wrote that one book about poor living conditions in the cities? Yeah, Jacob Riis, very good. It's How the Other Half Lives. What movement was designed to improve the slums and the ghettos? What was the name of that movement? Whole House was one of them. Was one of the houses in this movement. But you already have one word now. You have house. What's the first word? Something house movement. Settlement house. Very good. Come on, folks. What other reforms? So Spargo, John Spargo, right? He's about child labor, bitter cry of children. Huh? Mueller v. Oregon, sure. Supreme Court case, Mueller v. Oregon. Adkins v. Children's Hospital, so the Adkins case, sure. Florence Kelly, where would you put her? Okay, so Florence Kelly. What other key reforms that happened during this time? Eric. Okay. Keating Owens Act, yeah. Keating Owens. Adkins v. Children's Hospital. Yeah. Yeah, where would you put 16th and 17th Amendment? Political. So you have the 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment. Sure. You have 2 other amendments. Where would you put them? Oh, 19th we already have. Where would you put the 18th Amendment? It could actually go in all 3 of these, because you can make the argument for it, right? 18th Amendment showed the power of reforms in the federal government. That's the first one. The workplace, the 18th Amendment resulted in safer, more productive workplace. Third one, 18th Amendment allowed for a reduction to domestic abuse and poverty. They all work. Where do you guys want to put it? You guys can put it wherever you want. I'll put 18, 18, 18. Because, folks, it's all about what? It's all about argument. Alcohol and argument. Yeah, it's about arguing it. If you can argue it, then it's fine. If I showed you this cup, you said, well, that cup shows that Mr. King is a fan of the environment he doesn't want to waste. No. That cup shows that Mr. King is a fan of coffee. No. That cup shows that Mr. King is always very tired. No. That shows that Mr. King does not like cold water. Right? It's all arguments for the same thing. It's the same fact. So long as you use the fact and you argue it correctly or argue it well, there is no argument. I mean, can you argue a fact incorrectly? Sure you can. You can say, the 19th Amendment showed that men deserve the right to vote. That's wrong. That's just completely wrong. But you can have various degrees of correct. Okay? Do you guys think you can write this one? Yeah. All you're talking about is how successful they are. And what you're going to do is one paragraph is going to be your, they were successful, and the other paragraph is going to be about 2 of these. So imagine that, let's say, this was your first paragraph. Political reforms were pretty successful. Then paragraph 2 and 3 can be this one and this one. Or however you want to do it. But does that make sense, though? You have, yes? No. You can only write about 2 of them. No, not even that. You're going to choose one of these, and that's going to be your first paragraph. Whichever one you have the least to write about, that's your first paragraph. Your second and third paragraph, let's say this is paragraph 1. Paragraph 2, you're going to divide it right here. Paragraph 2 is going to be this, and paragraph 3 is going to be this. Does that make sense? So you might focus on women. Second paragraph is focused on children, child labor. Or if you want to do the first one focuses on state reforms, second one focuses on federal reforms. And then your first paragraph is just that, because you just do all social in one paragraph. Paragraph 2 is state political reforms, and third paragraph is federal political reforms. So you have to be able to take one of these topics and divide it. That's why I say whichever one you have the most information about, that should be your strongest, and you divide it into 2 paragraphs. So you say, oh, so of course there were many workplace reforms that helped out women, Mueller v. Oregon, Lochner v. New York, Adkins v. Children's Hospital, that were somewhat successful. Unfortunately, they ultimately failed with child labor laws, as shown in Hamburg v. Dagenhart, Florence Kelley, Keating Owens, all those things. Does that make sense, though, guys? You take your strongest that you know the most about, and you make that your double paragraph. Yeah?
Did you ever give us back the essay for like class, like unit 5?
Oh, no, you did it.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I just ran out of time. I graded them, and I gave you guys grades for them. I likely probably never gave them back to you. I think I put them in the back, and then we just never got around to it, so I just tossed them all. You got a grade for it. You can check your grade online. But everyone comfortable with this one? Cool. Then your fourth essay is almost exactly the same. However, you need to be focusing on who? Women. So you take, folks, the exact same facts from this one, and all you have to add now are key women that promoted these reforms. Does that make sense? So again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Right now, folks, we're not talking about the reforms because we have that in this paragraph. We have that in this outline, right? This one, all we're talking about are women or women's groups that promoted reforms. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So raise your hand if you can tell me women or women's groups that promoted a specific reform that fall into one of these categories. Start with Alfonso. NASA, where would you put that? So NASA, definitely women's rights, right? That's pretty easy. Whoops. I'll take that. Yellow. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, come over once faster. All right, bye. It's Mr. Benares. Who wants to hang out? I'm gonna come over later. We're gonna braid each other's hair. NASA is good for women's rights. Fernando. Alice Paul. Also women's rights. Carrie Chapman Catt. She's women's rights. What else is women's rights? Alice Paul was in charge of it. The National Women's Party. Very good. What else can we talk about in terms of women or women's groups involved? Eric. The Anti-Saloon League, sure. That had some women. Can you include one that is more specifically led by women? The Women's Christian Temperance Union, sure. Who can tell me who led the Women's Christian Temperance Union? Who was in charge of that organization? Frances Willard, sure. That's all temperance. What else, or where else do we have women getting involved with social conditions or politics or labor? Muckrakers. Where would we put the muckrakers? We have different ones. But there's so many of them that we have to choose which one. Which muckraker goes where? Ida Tarbell goes where? So Ida Tarbell. Right? She's a muckraker. She's about, working conditions. Who else is a muckraker that we can fit somewhere? Ida B. Wells. Where would she go? Social conditions. It's Ida B. Wells. She's about lynching. Who else can we talk about? Florence Kelley. Where can we put her? Yeah, Florence Kelley. She's about child labor. Who else can we talk about? Sure, that would go in the first one, but let's add Volstead Act here right now. Where do you want to put Volstead Act? It's temperance. Where do we put it? Volstead Act can go in any one of them. Let's put Volstead Act right here. What else, folks? What other women that were involved can we talk about? Yeah, Susan B. Anthony, is she, yeah, she's still alive at this time, so Susan B. Anthony. Jane Addams, where would you put Jane Addams? Social, yeah, because she did Settlement House. Anyone else you want to talk about? Huh? The Keating Owens Act, sure, we can talk about that under labor. Any other women or women's groups that we can talk about? Or are you guys happy with this list? Okay. I think this is pretty good. Because if you include these women with these facts, you should be fine. Because you clearly show women were involved during the Reform era, right? And you are able to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you include, what's her face? Stanton. That's 9 women. Who says we never talk about women in this class? I mean, honestly, we may not talk about women as much as we do men, but just men were just more prominent at the time. But there are key women in American history that have made significant reforms. And so, could you talk about this essay? Sure, you could. So, here's what I would like for you guys to do. You have this essay and you have this essay. They're pretty much the same essay. This one requires that you drop names of women. Should you do the same for this one anyway? You should. So, pick up your remotes. Except for Nancy. And so, which one do you guys want to write about? Progressive reformers or progressive women? Do you want progressive reformers or progressive women? Is it 14 seconds, folks? Come on, folks. All right, let's take a look. By a slight margin, progressive reformers. Now, folks, it's exactly the same essay, so I wouldn't really worry about it. Either way, you should be able to write about both. But you're going to be writing about the first one as well. Should you still include women? Of course, because those are facts. But you should be fine. And so, folks, that's your essay. You guys understand what you guys are supposed to do? Before you guys leave today, here's what I want from you. You guys quiet down. I want you guys to start working on your thesis for both of these. I want you to at least have a working argument for both of these essays before you leave today. Okay? So, you're going to be doing this one, and you're doing this one. So please have a working thesis. Open up your notebooks. One other tip you might want to use is to use your key terms and start highlighting all the facts you're going to use for your essays. So I'm going to use that one and that one and that one for this essay and that one for this essay. Yes, ma'am. No, it's a study guide. It's not an assignment. The only thing you actually have to turn in to me is the packet. Thursday. You should do it as a review anyway, so you should do it to review for your homework, for your test. All right, folks, you guys have about 10 minutes. Please start drafting a thesis. If you need one as a sample, here's the one I gave you guys last time. Now, real quick, guys, real quick. If you notice in this thesis, I didn't mention historians, right? And also, if you notice, I didn't say that one was right and one was wrong. I said one was kind of right, but one is more right. So you can have varying degrees of correct. But the other thing is that now that you're comfortable with thesis, you can change the wording all you want so long as you provide an argument. I think you guys are comfortable enough to kind of go on your own. So long as you provide an argument, that's fine by me how you want to structure it. So get to work, guys. Make sure you're working on some level of thesis. Yes.
Do you have the chapters
Which one?
for that was due to today?
Yeah, let me go grab those.
I left it somewhere.
This is the first time. It's not the first.
Yeah, they were still giving some.